Hey, so how's it going? So I want to talk about the top 10 famous New Zealanders that are only famous in New Zealand. Not, your internationally famous New Zealanders like your Jacinda Ardern's or your Lords or your Peter Jacksons, say. I want to talk about New Zealanders that every single Kiwi knows. But, outside New Zealand, you probably never heard of them. So I was inspired by this YouTuber, JJ McCullough, who makes videos about Canada. And he did a video like this, where he talked about famous Canadians.
But not famous Canadians in the sense of famous Canadian-born celebrities like Drake or Bieber or Deadpool. We all know enough about them already. And not famous Canadians in the sense of politicians either. If you want to learn more about those jerks, you can watch one of my many Canadian politics-themed videos. No, today we are simply going to talk about a few people who are famous in Canada, but nowhere else.
So I'm gonna rip that, and I'm gonna make my own video. And I'm also only going to talk about living Kiwis. So I'm not going to talk about your Ernest Rutherford, or your Kate Shepherds, or Michael Joseph Savage, or Edmund Hillary, or Hone Heke. These are very famous Kiwis, but they're not around anymore. And I want to talk about living, today Kiwis that we all know. So none of these people are in any particular order, it's not a ranking of best Kiwis or anything. This is just, 10 Kiwis that we all know.
I can smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
Okay, Boomer.
We have the most enormous big gay rainbow across my electorate.
They're not going to win an election.
Let's keep moving!
So the first one's a bit risky. I don't know how much it would play in the future, but I'm going to go Ashley Bloomfield. So Ashley Bloomfield is the Director of General Health in New Zealand, and he led the combat against COVID-19 in New Zealand. Being the face of the lockdowns. He did all the press conferences, everything like that. Everyone loves him and everyone knows him, And he's charming because he's not a politician. He's just a likable guy, and he seemed like a very stable force in our country during the hard times that COVID lockdown was. And obviously, right next to him, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister, was there the whole time. But Ashley Bloomfield being non-political was very important, I think, during the time to really listen to the facts. If I'm going to compare it to an American, he's like the Fauci for New Zealand. Yeah, but he wasn't as politicized, which is great. We didn't criticize him for being too radically left wing or anything like that. Which I think is very good. I've read articles in the Herald and stuff saying Ashley Bloomfield needs to get New Zealander of the Year and stuff, and I think that's a bit far. But we appreciate his hard work as a public servant, and and I think he's going to be known for a long time. I think we're going to remember him. It's risky because he's only been in the public sphere for about a year now. No one knew him before COVID, come on. But, I think it's interesting now that we all do know him, and I wonder if he will be well known, for the foreseeable future.
Kia ora koutou. Hello, New Zealand. I'm Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, and this is COVID-19 announcement.
So the next one I'm going to go is Zoe Bell, who is a famous stunt woman. She does a lot of film stunts in America, on films such as Xeno, The Warrior Princess, a lot of Quentin Tarantino films. She was a stunt woman for Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, and she became really good friends with Quentin Tarantino, and then actually starred in his future films like Death Proof and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Whoa! What the fuck is going on here? Hey, jackass, this is our series lead. What the fuck are you thinking?
You're right, Janet. I'm sorry about that.
Don't fucking Janet me, you prick.
So, back home?
I'm sorry, where's home? Australia, right?
What do you mean by that, mate?
Zoe's from New Zealand, and you never, I repeat, never call a Kiwi an Aussie.
That is, unless you want your ass kicked.
I'm so sorry, I really am.
Oh, that's okay. We're just taking the piss out of you, mate.
She brings this real Kiwi charm to this foreign landscape, which I think is very fun. When you see her in some of these Tarantino films, she doesn't tone down the Kiwiness, and it's great. It's so fun to see her in these films, and is doing a full Kiwi accent. It's so fun, and she's just very charming and very likable, just a very likable person. I think I saw her in recently. She did this ad for distracted driving that I thought was really funny and very interesting, and it's just a great time. She's great.
Hey guys, Zoe here, back in New Zealand and loving it. Look at this beautiful weather. Really just wanted to say thank you, really, for being on this amazing journey with me, starting in here in New Zealand on Xena, then making my way to America for Kill Bill, Death Proof, Thor Ragnarok with Tykes, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, pretty special. Kind of like made a career for myself, basically, out of fighting, flipping, falling, flying. Like, whoa, how cool is that? Heaps of car stuff, flipped cars, surfed cars, been hit by cars, flipped over cars, heaps of dangerous car stuff. But I'll tell you one thing I definitely won't do, and that's drive distracted.
Alright, next up, I'm going to go Willie Apiata. So Willie Apiata was a former corporal in the New Zealand SAS, and he's really beloved. He's really beloved in this country. So in the Afghanistan war, when New Zealand had some troops there, he did a big act of bravery in the line of fire, and he saved some of his friends who were being shot at. Like something that he went above and beyond. What would be expected of him in that situation.
He was given his first assignment to Afghanistan. It was there that a single act of bravery would become part of New Zealand folklore. An SAS patrol was ambushed by Taliban fighters. Willie's vehicle struck by a rocket, critically injuring the commander. Willie carried him to safety, running 70 metres through enemy fire to get vital medical assistance. He then rearmed and went back to help successfully fend off the Taliban attack.
And for that, he was awarded the Victoria Cross. The biggest honour you could possibly get in New Zealand for military service, and in any of the Commonwealth countries, so the UK, in Canada, in Australia, all these places. This is the highest honour for any military person. He was actually the first Kiwi to receive the Victoria Cross since World War II. I guess because we're not really in many wars. We were in Afghanistan and Iraq for a little bit, not active war, so not really situations that you would actually see firefights. And also we were in Vietnam for a bit. We try not to talk about that. But Willie Apiata is such a down-to-earth guy, such a great Kiwi bloke. Man of few words. He's so charming when you hear him talk.
I now come home to this land as a warrior, as a soldier, as a humble man.
And he constantly polls as one of the most trusted people in New Zealand. I could see him being the Governor General in the future if he wanted it. I don't know if that's something he would aspire to, but I think he could be the Governor General if he wanted it. I think, you could probably see that. So I got really torn. I wanted to choose a TV personality, like a news journalist. And I was thinking John Campbell, Mike McRoberts, Hilary Barry, but I stuck with the one that I like the most, and it's Patrick Gallo. Who doesn't fucking love Patrick Gallo? Patrick Gallo is the best. So he's a political correspondent. He does a lot of the debates during political times, during elections, I mean. And people just love him. He's just so goofy, but he's so straight to the point and doesn't fuck around. He asks direct questions to people who are quite high up, the leader of parties and the prime minister and all that, and he'll just ask them to their face, if they're talking shit, and it's great. He's to the point and he's excellent. And obviously, you gotta love when he said this is the fucking news, right? That's one of his crowning achievements.
Campaign between James and Phoebe really heating up now. Things. This is the fucking news.
So I've only put one politician on this list, and it's frankly the most famous politician in New Zealand that isn't the Prime Minister, and it's Winston Peters. Winston Peters is the quintessential, politician that everyone knows in this country. So Winston Peters, former head of, is he still the head? The head of the New Zealand First Party. He just recently got voted out of Parliament, but he's been in and out of Parliament for the last 30, 40 years. It's insane. It's insane the amount of power that he's had, and the amount of control that he's had over New Zealand Parliament and New Zealand politics as a whole. He's king-made 3 prime ministers I can think of off the top of my head. And he's so good. I'm thinking about doing a video specifically just on Winston Peters, because he's such an interesting guy. A video similar to my Peter Dunn video that I made. Winston Peters is just so likable and so charming and so funny, but also you fucking hate his guts, right? Because he's a dick. He makes Parliament so lively and so fun. I think he's gonna really be missed in the halls of Parliament. Alright, so I've chosen this next one. I think he's not actually, his name isn't so well known, but who he is really well known. So Peter Beck, alright? So Peter Beck is the founder of Rocket Labs. Rocket Labs is the first private company in the Southern Hemisphere that has launched rockets into space. It is incredible. He is single-handedly, I say single-handedly, but you know, like, him and his company and the people around him have put New Zealand on the map in the form of putting things in space. We're one of the few countries in the world that have put satellites in space, and it's incredible. We're just little old New Zealand, 5 million people, you know, like, you know, we're a humble little country at the bottom of the world, and we've got shit in space. It's so cool, and it's all because of him. It's a private company, you know, similar to SpaceX. He's one of the only non-billionaires that is funding this shit of, you know, private space, you know, traveling companies. You know, private companies that are going into space. It's great that he is doing this, and I really appreciate his work, and I hope, you know, the Rocket Labs company goes further and further. It's a great company. So obviously we're talking about New Zealand. I've got to talk about rugby, right? Rugby union, we all love it. Now it's our favourite sport, favourite pastime in this country, and I think I have to cement Richie McCaw. Richie McCaw, you know, former captain of the All Blacks. He captained the All Blacks when we won 2 World Cups. You know, like, I can't think of another All Black that I could cement as the greatest living All Black, if not Richie McCaw. Richie McCaw is amazing. Everyone loves him. He was a really great captain. A really great flanker, I believe he was. Now that I said that, I don't know if I'm correct if he was the flanker. I believe he was. Obviously, he's not the only famous, you know, rugby player we've had in this country before. Off the top of my head, you know, the ones that have passed. You know, we've got John Alamu, you know, Colin Meads, or Grant Fox. You know, like, you know, there's so many great rugby players in New Zealand because, you know, we love the sport. You know, it's our favourite sport. But Richie McCaw is so well loved. He's such a nice guy, and you know, people love him. You know, like, I actually think he could be Prime Minister if he wanted to. Like, I don't know. You know, I don't know his policies or anything. You know, I'm not saying I'd vote for him. I don't know. But he's a really nice guy, and I think a lot of people would vote for him if he wanted to be Prime Minister. Alright, another sportsman. I'm going to go David Tua. He's one of our best boxers we've ever had in New Zealand. You know, I believe he was ranked 3rd in the world for heavyweight boxing. It's incredible. They called him the Terminator. You know, like the Terminator. You know, and because he punched like a fucking truck. You know, it was a little before my time. Like he was boxing, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, and like I remember watching one of the biggest fights at the end of his career where he fought Shane Cameron. It was meant to be the fight of the century. So Shane Cameron was this other big New Zealand boxer. It was meant to be the fight of the century. David Tua knocked him out 2nd round. Fucking ridiculous. Like David Tua was incredible with his knockout rate. You know, he knocked out 43 people. Like, he only won with decision 9 times in his entire career. Like, you know, like, it's something ridiculous, like a knockout rate of like 80-something. It's insane and unheard of, you know. He was just a machine. He just fucking crushed people. Sadly, I think he kind of dampened his legacy because he kept boxing a little past his prime. Like, obviously that's coming from me, right? I don't fucking, you know, if he wants to box, let him box, right? Like, let him do his thing. But, like, you know, he lost his, like, last 2 fights. You know, he wasn't in you know, the peak of his career, and I think that's going to damage his legacy in the future, which is a shame, you know, but I think he's a great guy. He was famously on Wheel of Fortune, you know, years back, and he famously asked for an O for awesome.
Your way, David. O for awesome. And,
you know, obviously, like, everyone loves that joke, but he actually didn't say that. Like, I wouldn't be fair if I just said that's what he said. He was saying O for Olsen, like the name Olsen, but everyone thought it said awesome. And, you know, he played along with the joke. He even owns the license plate O for awesome, and it's hilarious, right? Like, he goes with it. You know, he's a nice guy. You know, he's good for the banter.
Like David Tua. You ever see David Tua fight? No. He's a heavyweight boxer, fought, like, he had, like, crazy potential. He lost to Lennox Lewis when Lennox Lewis was on the top. Yeah, but David Tua was crushing people. He knocked out John Ruiz. Pull up David Tua versus John Ruiz. This was when they were both contenders before Ruiz won the title. And David Tua knocked him out in 1 round. David Tua was terrifying because he could hit like a train and his head was like fire hydrant sized. Yeah. And he could just bang, he could just take him in the face. There he is.
Which is scary, right?
Oh my God. I remember this dude. And you see there, Olympic bronze medalist in 92. I mean, he was a serious athlete. So it wasn't just that he could take a great punch. He was also an elite boxer. I mean, David Tua in his prime, he's one of the guys that gets looked past. Like, on any given night, David Tua might have been able to beat everyone in the world. It's just putting together those nights over and over and over again. Look at this. Boom! Ruiz is hurt. Look at this motherfucker. Come on, son. How good was David Tua? Terrifying!
We have a lot of beloved children's writers in New Zealand. Like, it's a big thing in New Zealand, writing books for kids. So I'm going to go with Joy Cowley as my option, but I think that there's a plethora of other children's writers. You know, so don't think I'm forgetting about all them. You know, she wrote things like Mrs. Wishy-Washy and The Meanies. You know, like, obviously that's not going to mean anything to people outside New Zealand. But I think a lot of people, especially my age, and maybe a bit older than me, would definitely go, yes, of course, Joy Cowley, she's great. You know, another big one who sadly passed is Margaret Mayhew. You know, like, if I was going to take all children's writers in New Zealand, you know, like living and dead, I would probably go Margaret Mayhew. You know, she's pretty amazing. Alright, for number 10, alright, I took a left field option. I had some other options. You know, I was thinking about maybe political commentators like Paul Henry, or I was thinking something like Valerie Adams for shot put, or, you know, you've got lots of sailors in New Zealand that we love, but I thought to go for more of an infamous person than a famous person, and I went David Bain. So David Bain was a very interesting character in New Zealand. In 1995, he was found guilty of murdering his entire family. 5 murders. You know, his father, his mother, all his siblings. It was monstrous, right? And he went to jail for life. But in 2009, his case was overturned, and we have a lot of arguments in New Zealand about whether, you know, David Bain is innocent. Is David Bain guilty? You know, it's like the O.J. Simpson, you know, situation. And it's really interesting to see, you know, how you feel about the David Bain case. You know, I think it says a lot about you. About, you know, whether you believe the justice system, or you just believe your gut and what you feel like. But there was like a whole debacle over him getting his compensation when he got out of prison. Because obviously, if you get put in prison wrongly, and you're falsely accused and you're falsely in prison, and then you're found innocent later, you should get some fucking fat stacks of cash. They should give you a shit ton of money. So, you know, some fuck off money, you know, multiple millions of dollars, to you know, compensate you for stealing years and years of your life. Like, David Bain lost like 12 years of his life. You know, like in the eyes of the law, he is innocent. So he should get fucking stacks of cash. And he didn't. After, like, you know, like years of arguing for it, the government finally settled and gave them just under $1 million. Not as compensation, but as a shut up money. It's called an ex grata payment. So it's like free money. It's like a gift. The government is gifting this money to David Bain if he promises never to ask for compensation again. And I'm pretty sure he accepted. I couldn't really find a clear-cut answer of this, if he accepted the money or not. I assume he did, because obviously he's got to pay all his lawyers and shit, right? But yeah, this trial is very famous because it's the most expensive trial in New Zealand history, costing taxpayers $7 million. You know, that's also including the ex grata payment as well, I believe. But it's really interesting, you know, with the controversies of whether he's innocent or guilty, over the controversies of him not getting compensation, over the controversies of, you know, so expensive are the taxpayers. It's like a perfect storm of an interesting case in New Zealand, and I think David Bain deserves a spot on this list. And I think a lot of people, you know, they know who the fuck he is, right? So that's it. That's 10 famous Kiwis I could think of that I think most Kiwis know. Well, yeah, I think most Kiwis watching this video would know over half of these. You know, probably more, probably most of them, like, you know, 80% of them. But let me know who I missed. You know, I'm not meaning to screw anyone over. So, like, obviously I wasn't talking about your famous Kiwis, you know, your internationally famous Kiwis like Jacinda Ardern or anything like that. You know, like our Prime Minister. I'm not talking about that. You know, just specifically famous in New Zealand. And maybe I could do a follow-up. I don't know. You know, let me know what you thought, and cheers.